Open your phone right now and scroll through any social media feed for exactly 60 seconds. You will immediately see someone younger than you making significantly more money than you ever have. You will see someone with a more attractive body, a happier relationship, or a seemingly perfect, effortless life. And almost instantly, a quiet, heavy, sinking feeling will begin forming somewhere deep inside your chest. The quiet, terrifying suspicion that you are somehow falling behind, failing, or simply not doing enough with your life. We like to blame modern technology, algorithms, and glowing screens for this exhausting psychological torment today. But the truth is, the smartphone in your hand did not invent the human obsession with social comparison at all. It merely weaponized an ancient hardwired biological survival mechanism that has been running inside your brain for millions of years. To understand why you cannot simply stop caring about what other people think, you have to look backward historically. You have to understand what social status actually meant to your ancestors living in small nomadic tribes on the African savanna. In the modern world, being unpopular or having low social status might just make you feel slightly sad or lonely. But in the prehistoric world, being at the absolute bottom of your tribe's social hierarchy was essentially a slow death sentence. When food was incredibly scarce, the highest-ranking members of the tribe always ate first and ate the most. When predators attacked in the middle of the night, the most valued members were heavily protected in the center of the sleeping group. If you were deemed useless, weak, or socially irrelevant, you were the first one left behind to die during a brutal winter. Therefore, constantly scanning the tribe to see exactly where you ranked was not a vanity project. It was a biological radar. Evolution violently selected for humans who were obsessively paranoid about their social standing relative to everybody else around them. Your ancestors survived specifically because they constantly asked themselves if they were doing better or worse than the person standing next to them. The human brain evolved a highly sensitive neurological alarm system designed to track social status, continuously and completely automatically. When you move up in the hierarchy, your brain rewards you with massive, intoxicating floods of serotonin and dopamine physiologically. You feel confident, powerful, secure, and physically lighter when you perceive yourself as winning the social game temporarily. But when you perceive yourself as falling behind, your brain completely cuts off those feel-good chemicals instantly without warning. It floods your nervous system with cortisol, creating the exact same physical stress response as running away from a wild predator. That sinking feeling you get when looking at a billionaire on Instagram is literally your ancient brain screaming that you are going to starve. In 1954, psychologist Leon Festinger officially named this biological phenomenon social comparison theory academically. Festinger realized that humans possess an absolute inability to evaluate themselves independently in a psychological vacuum. You cannot actually know if you are smart, wealthy, attractive, or successful without comparing yourself to an external baseline first. Is earning $50,000 a year a massive, life-changing financial success or a miserable, suffocating failure? The answer depends entirely on whether your closest friends are earning $30,000 or $300,000 annually. We constantly engage in two entirely different directions of comparison, subconsciously every single day of our lives. Upward comparison happens when we look at people doing significantly better than us to figure out how to improve ourselves efficiently. This can be highly motivating, but it also constantly reminds us of our own perceived inadequacies and painful limitations emotionally. Downward comparison happens when we look at people doing worse than us to artificially soothe our own deep psychological anxieties. We secretly feel a brief, comforting rush of superiority when we see someone else failing, stumbling, or losing their status socially. It sounds incredibly cruel, but it is just the primate brain desperately trying to reassure itself that it is finally safe from the bottom. For hundreds of thousands of years, this comparative radar worked perfectly because the scale of human society was incredibly small. If you lived in a prehistoric tribe of 50 people, you only had to compete with a handful of people in your specific age group. You did not have to be the absolute fastest runner in the entire world. You just had to be slightly faster than the guy sleeping next to you. You could easily be the best hunter, the best storyteller, or the most attractive person in your immediate tiny physical environment. Finding a secure, comfortable place near the top of the local hierarchy was an entirely realistic and achievable goal historically. But over the last 2 decades, modern technology completely destroyed the natural boundaries of the human social environment forever. You no longer live in a tribe of 50 people. You now live inside a terrifying digital village of 8 billion people simultaneously. When you open your phone today, you are no longer comparing yourself to the slightly more successful guy in your local neighborhood. You are forcing your primate brain to compete directly against the top 0.001% of the entire human species. You are looking at the most genetically beautiful humans on Earth, illuminated by professional lighting and filtered by artificial intelligence. You are watching 22-year-old tech billionaires standing on private yachts in pristine oceans you will never actually visit. You are exposed to prodigies, geniuses, and anomalies who represent the absolute extreme statistical outliers of human capability globally. Your ancient brain does not understand statistics, algorithms, or the fact that these digital images are heavily manipulated illusions entirely. Your brain simply sees these glowing avatars as members of your own tribe who are violently outperforming you in every conceivable way. Mathematically, it is now completely impossible to ever feel like you are enough, because there will always be millions of people better than you globally. The finish line for success has been tied to a rocket and launched into deep space, completely out of reach for the average human permanently. And to make matters worse, we are constantly comparing our own chaotic, messy reality to everyone else's carefully curated highlight reel. You know exactly what your own life looks like behind closed doors when the cameras are turned off entirely. You know about your financial debts, your relationship arguments, your self-doubt, and your deeply embarrassing past mistakes intimately. But you never get to see the messy, agonizing behind-the-scenes reality of the successful strangers you envy online continuously. You only see the flawless vacation photos, the triumphant career announcements, and the perfectly posed romantic milestones. We are essentially comparing our own unedited, terrifying blooper reel to everyone else's aggressively polished Hollywood movie trailer constantly. This creates an epidemic of structural despair, where highly privileged people living in wealthy nations feel like absolute miserable failures daily. Even the people at the very top of the modern hierarchy cannot escape the brutal mathematics of this biological trap. Millionaires feel deeply insecure because they spend all their time comparing themselves to billionaires at exclusive country clubs. World-famous actors fall into severe depression because they did not win an Oscar like their slightly more famous rival did this year. The hedonic treadmill ensures that the moment you achieve a higher status, your brain instantly normalizes it and frantically demands even more. No amount of money, beauty, or fame will ever permanently turn off the comparative radar running deep inside your nervous system. It is a game designed by evolution specifically, so that it can never actually be won, only played exhaustingly until you die. So if we are biologically hardwired to constantly compare ourselves to others, how do we ever find peace in the modern world? The answer is not to naively pretend that status does not matter, or try to force your brain to stop comparing entirely. You cannot fight millions of years of primate evolution using just a few positive affirmations and a temporary digital detox. The secret is not to destroy the comparison machine, but to completely change the specific data you are feeding into it daily. The philosopher Jordan Peterson popularized a profound psychological rule for surviving the modern crisis of social comparison completely intact. Compare yourself only to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. When you shift the target of comparison from a stranger on the internet to your own past self, the entire psychological game changes instantly. You regain absolute control over the metrics of success because your past is a reality you actually understand intimately and accurately. Did you read one more page today than you did yesterday? Did you treat your partner slightly better? Did you save a little more money? This incredibly narrow internal focus turns the brutal evolutionary radar into a highly effective engine for sustainable personal growth. You must also ruthlessly curate the digital environment your primate brain is exposed to every single time you open a screen. Unfollowing accounts that trigger deep feelings of inadequacy is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of absolute neurological self-defense. You are actively protecting your serotonin levels from being hijacked by the artificial highlight reels of strangers you will never meet. Furthermore, we must actively practice something that goes completely against our natural evolutionary programming psychologically. We must learn to experience sympathetic joy, the incredibly rare ability to feel genuinely happy for the success of other people. When you train your brain to view another person's success as an inspiration rather than a personal threat, the anxiety completely dissolves. You stop viewing life as a zero-sum game where someone else's victory automatically equals your own devastating defeat emotionally. The universe is incredibly vast, and there is more than enough room for multiple people to experience joy and success simultaneously. But the most profound realization comes when you finally understand the ultimate futility of the comparison game itself, existentially. Look closely at the wealthiest, most powerful, and most famous human beings who have ever existed throughout all of recorded history. Alexander the Great conquered the entire known world by his early 30s, driven by an insatiable, endless desire for more status globally. Yet he died suddenly, feverish and exhausted, leaving behind a massive empire that immediately collapsed into brutal, bloody civil war. The emperors, kings, and billionaires of the past who successfully clawed their way to the absolute top of the human pyramid are all equally dead today. Their wealth is gone, their status is meaningless, and their bodies have returned to the exact same dirt as the poorest peasants they ruled over. In the grand, terrifying scale of cosmic time, the difference between a billionaire and a barista is mathematically indistinguishable entirely. We are all just temporary biological flashes of consciousness, desperately trying to find meaning on a tiny rock floating in infinite space. Wasting your brief, miraculous window of existence, worrying about whether your neighbor has a nicer car, is a profoundly tragic way to live. True freedom begins the exact moment you accept that you will always be a messy, flawed primate living in an overwhelmingly complex world. You will always have moments where you feel inadequate because your brain was literally designed to make you feel that way for survival. But you do not have to obey that ancient biological alarm system anymore because you are no longer running from predators on the savannah. You have enough food, you have shelter, and you are not going to be cast out of the tribe to die in the cold winter. You can consciously choose to step completely off the exhausting treadmill of status and simply exist quietly in the present moment instead. You can focus deeply on the few things that actually matter, the people you love, the work that fulfills you, and the quiet peace of your own mind. Because the only person who will ever truly care about the final authentic quality of your entire life experience is you. The rest of the world is far too busy scrolling through their own phones, worrying desperately about exactly the same things you are. Stop looking sideways at the impossible illusions of other people and finally start looking forward at the beautiful reality standing right in front of you.